if you can let me know that's started, right? Yeah. All right.
Yes,
So
it looks like it. I think your video is off, Mandy. I'm not sure.
I
We
can
can see it.
see you, Mandy.
can you see me? Okay. All right. If everybody's good to go, we'll start going. So again, welcome to this Virginia Enterprise Zone Renewal Training. So just as a reminder, of course, this is a map of the enterprise zones across the state of Virginia. And of course, as most of them are in South Side and Southwest, but we do have some on the Northern Neck and up towards Northern Virginia. And I look forward to when I'm able to get out here the next couple months and start doing some site visits. We do just want to review the grant year 2022 data. And so just as a reminder, we had a program fund of a little bit over 16 million, $16,250,000 that could be granted out this past calendar year. And so the team worked really hard to disperse over 42 total grants, and that was 104 real property investment grants at about a little bit over $9.3 million awarded, and 38 job creation grants with 1.795 million awarded. And that real property investment grant leveraged over $466 million in qualified real property investment grants. I think I'm a little tongue-tied this morning. My apologies. So just as a reminder on the annual timeline, they finished up the grant applications were due in April. Funds were dispersed by the end of June. Of course, the last thing that we were in discussion with many of you about was the local annual reports, which were due July 15th. And if we have any stragglers, I'm sure we are talking to you about that. And then, of course, that brings us to what we're talking about today, which is the new renewal request, which have a due date of October 7th. It's listed on here. Of course, I think this year that's on a Saturday, so we have put October 6th as the deadline. And our team, of course, continues to work on the state reports that will be due to General Assembly in October. And then if you're working on any boundary and incentive amendments, those are due by November 1st. So let's get into the renewal request requirements. So just as a reminder, this is under the code. The enterprise zones are initially in effect for a 10-year period. And then each zone has the opportunity to renew for up to 3 5-year renewal periods, giving you up to a 25-year zone designation. The recommendations for renewal, so those are, it is an application that's done from you to DHCD. And then once we receive those, we will make those recommendations to the governor's office for renewal. And that renewal is based on the following criteria, which is the locality's performance of its enterprise zone responsibilities, the continued need for the enterprise zone, and its effectiveness in creating jobs and capital investment. And so that is done through the CAMS portal system, and all of your renewal applications have been loaded into the CAMS portal. And then we're going to go over these baseline, the different things, the evaluation criteria. So the evaluation is based on responses.
Excuse me, ladies, I apologize. I have a question on the last slide, maybe in talking about the timeline. That is for the zones that were designated after a certain time period, correct? Because I have a zone that was designated in 2004 that received a 20-year designation and is eligible for its first 5-year renewal now. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So those are for the zones that were designated after 2005.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Kate. And sorry about that. Okay. Is there anything else we need to review on that one then, Kate or Tori? So we'll move on to the evaluation criteria. So the evaluation is based on responses to 4 different sections, and some of that is provided to you from DHCD. And we're looking for information that's both quantitative and qualitative. And so the CAMS portal system, the scored sections, there is a narrative section, an impact section, a distress score, and then additional consideration for basically a plus 75 points. So the narrative is worth 200 points. The impact is worth 100 points. The distress score is worth 100 points. And then if you have some other additional considerations, which we will go over, that's an additional 75 points. You do have to meet a threshold of at least 250 points out of the 400 to be considered for recommendation. So we're going to go over some of those narrative sections and information. So of course, as always, we need some general information on the CAMS portal system about your zone. And so we are asking for, of course, the highest elected official, your chief administrative officer. So all that's going to be the first set of information that you complete when you open that renewal request. Just to clarify, that highest elected official is probably going to be your mayor or your that's appointed by the city council, or it could be your board of supervisor person. So in this case, I used a locality close to me, so that was Tracy Moore. However, the chief administrative officer, of course, was the county administrator or maybe a city manager or a county town admin. And so in this case, it's Mike Watson. And then, but it's someone different who administers a zone. So it's Nicole Hare. So you could have 3 different names in there. In addition, you also need to include your zone description, which was put on your local annual report. So you could take that information. And then you also do need to provide some zone characteristics information. And so that's going to tell us, you're going to need to tell us how you are measured, like if it's the county or city zone or that 7%. If you choose that 7, I think it's the 7% of the population, then you will have to answer those additional questions. But if it's based off of the acreage size, then you do need to break down the zone acreage if you have more than one zone. So zone of area 1, area 2, and area 3. And we do, you will need to put zeros in that. If you say that you're a locality that only has 2 zones within that area, you would need to put a 0 for that 3rd zone. If we So let's get into the narrative information just a little bit. So again, the narrative on the zone renewal is worth 200 points out of the 400, and it is based on responses to a multitude of questions that are about the local need, the zone impact, as well as the locality's capacity to implement that. So type of marketing and other things you can do to implement it. We will provide you the opportunity to discuss factors that are both positive and negative, which may have influenced your past performance, and potential opportunities for improvement. Data regarding the incentive utilization and some of these different scores that will be utilized will be sent to you as the zone administrator or to each locality. And Kate, I would say we're probably going to do that by the end of the week, if not end of tomorrow. That, wouldn't you agree with that? So you'll have some additional information, as well as probably this presentation and a fabulous manual to go over as you're going through that process. So let's talk about some of those specific questions. One of the first questions is key economic conditions and or challenges and the ongoing need. So listed under that, so is just some helpful hints of the types of information that you can or should include, which can include your unemployment rate, your distress score, which will be sent to you. Have you had recent closings, openings, or expansions, the poverty level, main employers, the workforce, loss of industry, aging population, infrastructure, education, and average wage earnings. So basically, how do all of these conditions or challenges demonstrate the need for the enterprise zone designation? And those are just a couple sources of where you might be able to get some of that information. Continuing on, we want you to provide to us information about your community and economic development goals. So if you're looking for, if you have ways or programs that you've implemented to increase business retention and expansion, attracting specific industry types, improving site readiness, improving your infrastructure, or any upcoming development, or other investments that have been made specific to the zone or the locality, that would be the area to share that information. Have there been changes to your community goals since your designation application? This could be very similar to the previous question. And so just making sure that the goals associated with what your economic development goals in your area are still in line either with your designation application or have they changed somewhat. And then also we will provide an area for you to provide a history of your boundary amendments and or your incentive amendments if you've had those. And so you'll want to include information about those changes that have happened.
All right, now we're going to move on to the section on the impact of your local zone. This section is worth 100 points out of the total 400 points, and it's evaluated based on the population of the zone locality. So we take the 3 Census Bureau definitions that are on the chart on your screen: metropolitan, micropolitan, and rural. Metropolitan is 50,000 or more for the population. Micropolitan is 10,000 to 49,999, and rural is less than 10,000. So we take data regarding states' incentive utilization since your designation, and we will be sending that to you. But we take that data and we put your locality into one of the 3 definitions: metro, micro, or rural. And we compare your local state utilization to other localities who have the same Census Bureau definition or population estimates. So that's helpful in that if you are a smaller locality, you're not being compared to a larger locality. It helps to make things more even. And so then we take the median state incentive qualification for each classification during the past 5 years, and we assign it a point value. So if you are above the median number, you will be assigned 100 points. If you're right at the median number, then you will be assigned 50 points. Below, 25 points. And if you've had no utilization in that time, then your locality will be assigned 0 points. We will be sending out Excel spreadsheet with the state incentive utilization of your locality to you, just so that you have that for your records and you can see the information that we're looking at when we come up with these scores. But we will also be providing these impact scores to you as well. And all of that will be sent to you by the end of this week. So part of the zone impact also has some narrative information in which we are asking you questions. The first is about the conditions within the boundaries of the enterprise zone. How have the conditions within the zone boundaries evolved over the past 10 years? This could be anything from growth of the population, growth of your commercial districts. Maybe you've had a revitalization of your downtown area that's in your enterprise zone. Those are the things that you want to talk about. So it could be both positive and negative conditions that have affected your zone. Maybe you had a really large company shut down and you lost a lot of jobs and that affected your zone. Those are all things that you want to mention in that question. The second question is your local incentive utilization and impact. So these are those local incentives that the locality provides. What has been the impact of offering those incentives? And please describe the utilization during the past 5 years. So of that list of incentives that the locality provides, which incentives are used the most, which maybe are not used very often, and you're thinking about possibly changing or getting rid of and replacing with another local incentive so that you're providing a robust amount of incentives that can all be utilized within the zone. The next question is about economic development announcements. Have there been any recent or will there be any upcoming economic development announcements? So that can be from the locality itself, it may be from the governor's office, or it may be from VEDP. How will these businesses benefit from the state enterprise zone incentives? And please provide documentation, including a timeline and a copy of the press release if possible. And of course, if that is confidential information, you can let us know that and it will stay confidential. The next question is similar to the one about the local incentives, but this one's about the state incentive effectiveness and impact. So what has been the effectiveness of those state incentives encouraging job creation and private investment? What impact have the state incentives had on your local economic conditions? Has having the state incentives in the enterprise zone helped you to build up certain districts or certain areas or even certain industry within your enterprise zone? So this is when we ask you to please review the 5-year state incentive data that we provide to you to help you come up with the answers to this question. The next question is the zone impact on your BRE, your business recruitment, retention, and expansion efforts. How has the availability of your local incentives played a role in your BRE efforts? And please identify any specific businesses that have located or expanded, or some key projects that have been completed due to the availability of incentives, both state and local. So you can tell the first part of the question is based on local. The second part of the question is based on state and local. Just keep an eye out for where we identify whether we're asking you about state or local incentives to help you to better answer the question. Additional local community and economic development resources. What other businesses or development incentives are available within the enterprise zone boundaries? And describe any funding sources or programs, both public and private, that the community has been able to leverage because of the enterprise zone program. So these can be other agency-related programs that are within DHCD, like your Industrial Revitalization Fund. They could be other programs in the state, like a tourism zone or a technology zone, and they could be local programs or grants, such as grants or programs through your local IDA or EDA. Areas of growth and investment. Where will the community make additional public improvements or experience ongoing growth by location and industry? Are these areas currently within the boundaries of the enterprise zone? And if so, how will the enterprise zone affect those areas? So maybe you have a new industrial site that you are working on. Maybe you have a project with VEDP with a business ready site and you're receiving funding for that. We want to know about those projects and those upcoming improvements that are being made to public infrastructure and how the enterprise zone may affect those projects and improvements and whether they're in the boundaries of the enterprise zone, because if they are not, then that's something that you may want to consider in the upcoming year in adding it to be a part of your enterprise zone boundaries. And then the last question is the opportunities in this section is the opportunities for improvement. What are the opportunities to increase effectiveness of your enterprise zone, and how will they be addressed should the zone receive a 5-year extension? The next question is about the locality's capacity to implement the enterprise zone. So this is where we ask for your zone marketing description and an attachment of any kind of marketing efforts that you may have. We have a marketing one-pager that we've shared with you all that a lot of you are using. You're welcome to attach that. We want to know if you've done updates to your locality's website, to the enterprise zone page, or the information about the enterprise zone page on the website. If so, you can provide screenshots and attach those there. As you can see, I use Newport News as an example here. I really like this one-pager. I always like to tell folks when I was an enterprise zone local zone administrator myself, when I needed ideas of how I could be doing better marketing or improving my marketing, I would get on the other enterprise zone sites throughout the state and just kind of steal those ideas and copy them. It's a good compliment for people to be using you as an example and to be taking those ideas and using them to help market their own zones. Because when one enterprise zone is successful, we're all building together and becoming more successful. So the last section is your distress score. The distress score is up to 100 points out of that total 400 points. This is a score that the staff of DHCD will be assigning to you, and it's calculated for each locality based on a combination of the fiscal stress ranking, the unemployment rate, and the median household income. These are the same criteria used to evaluate zone designation requests in the beginning when zones are first designated, and we'll be providing these scores to you. We will be sending those in the group of information that we'll be sending at the end of this week. Then there's a little opportunity for some bonus points, some extra credit points. So you can receive up to 75 additional points. And so this is when you will consider recent or upcoming announcements within the zone boundaries from the governor's office. So there was a question back about impact. And so you might be using some of those same governor's announcements here as well. But even if you're using them again from that other question, it will help to earn extra points. And these, if you know that there are some upcoming and it's a confidential project, you can tell us about that. And of course, we will keep that information confidential. This is our question and answer page. I just saw Kelvin with his hands up. Kelvin, what question do you have?
We were always here in our office told that anything coming from the governor's office, we could not talk about it until they officially announce it, because otherwise it would impact the incentives that they may be getting. So I don't know if I could share those things in any draft, because they're so tight-lipped about it.
That's a good question. And so yes, that is true. Often we know about those announcements already as well. I will say this, one exciting thing is that we have started working more closely with VEDP and the incentive team. And so they are coming to us before they even hand you all over those packages of different incentives to make sure that they're on the right track with the enterprise zone incentives, and so that they get ahead of the game and we can reach out to those folks and say, hey, I know you were working on a project with VEDP a few years ago, and we're reaching out to you to make sure that you have all the information you need and that you meet the deadlines for enterprise zone. If you don't feel comfortable putting it into CAMs, we could talk about doing something differently. Tori, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you could include just we are working closely and soon, hope to have an announcement soon from the governor's office of significant economic development project or something like that. So again, we take this confidentiality very seriously, as well as we know that you all do. So yeah, if something's in the works but hasn't been announced yet, you can put that in there and not say anything specifically about it, but that it should be forthcoming.
Good question. Thanks, Kelvin. What other questions do you all have about the renewal process, about CAMs, anything like that?
This is Alicia. I have some questions. This is my first time. I guess I'm wondering, like, what are I know there's only so much you can answer this. What are the odds of a zone not being renewed? Like, just what from your experience can you say about that?
It is not likely to happen.
That's what I was figuring.
It has not been the will
I can only
of
say
the legislators.
In the past, since we've started having to do the renewals, there has not been one locality that we have not renewed.
Okay.
Put it that way.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was thinking, we very actively use our zone, and our EDA is very active with local incentives. So I'm assuming we shouldn't be worried about it. But yeah, we'll do our due diligence.
It's required by code, and there is a possibility that there could be a reason or not. A lot of your points are going to come from the distress and impact scores that we're going to provide. So it's potential that 200 of your 250 points just come from that alone, not including the narrative that you have. So And even if you don't have the top score in either one of those, you know, if you do have the utilization and things are happening in the zones, then that will certainly probably be enough to put you over that 250 threshold.
Right. And can you explain to me, big picture, you know, you talked about up to 3 5-year renewal, a 25-year total. I remember in an earlier training, what's the big picture for how long localities will have an enterprise zone? Like, when do we need to be looking at when we won't have an enterprise zone?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think, you know, it was about 5 years ago when they added in the, you know, that's when some zones were getting ready to expire in 2019, 2020. And so that's when the legislature decided to add 25, you know, another 5-year period on it, and then added these renewal periods with that. So we're going to be coming up soon on some designations that will be expiring at the end of next year, 2024. So I have a feeling there's going to be a push, you know, to kind of make some additions or, you know, do something to make it change so that some of those localities don't lose them. So we don't know what that will look like. We have no idea, you know, what kind of you know, legislation that someone might, you know, they might allow us to keep up the same number of zones we have. Right now, we're limited to 30 zones. So any ones that expire over the next 5 years, you'll be out without a zone, you know, under the current legislation, the current code, until 2029 or 2030 at the earliest. So that's when we'll get down kind of below that the 30 zone threshold that's, you know, kind of currently in the code. So it remains to be seen. We don't know. We haven't proposed any legislation regarding that, but I know there's some talk. VETA is talking about some changes to, you know, that's one of their emphases that they have this year coming up is enterprise zone.
Which organization?
The Virginia Economic Developers Association.
VETA. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One other
Thank
thing
you.
I wanted to add in general is that if you are working on your renewal and you're coming up on a question where you're just having a hard time with, or you're not sure if you kind of answered it the right way, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Mandy. We'll be happy to assist. It's not like you have to do it all on your own and feel uncomfortable about it. Our goal obviously is for you all to get the most points as possible. We'll help you in any way that we can when you have questions or you need suggestions or examples. I also have, if you're interested, last year we had one locality. All of the localities did a really great job with their renewals, but we had one locality last year that just went above and beyond and kind of just really did an awesome job providing lots of data, lots of narrative information. And so if you're interested and you would like a copy of their renewal document, I asked that LZA's permission to use it as a good example. I'm happy to email that to you. So just send me an email requesting it and I will send it to you.
And Mallory had asked for just a reminder of when the due date was, and those are in the CAMS portal. It's being due October 6th. And then Kelvin, did you have a question? You raised your hand again.
I think Tori answered it. I didn't know if that was something from an advocacy standpoint that maybe the localities need to talk about, because the enterprise zones are such great incentives for our businesses that come in to the area. And I know when we thought ours was expiring, you know, Corey and Ken were really concerned if we lost that because it is such a great incentive. It's helped us out a lot if we needed to start talking to our legislators about the importance of that. So I think there's some support there if it ever got to that point that we needed to do some advocating from the city standpoint.
Right. Yeah, we can't do the advocacy, but you as the localities that would be impacted by that are certain.
So if you have some and you want us to at least plant those seeds, I'm sure we'll be more than happy to at least talk about why we need to have as many people as possible in the zones, because we've benefited greatly for having the zone. So they're important.
Thanks, Kelvin. Brian has a good question in the chat. He said, are any local approvals or resolutions required supporting the renewal? The answer to that question is no. Everything is the questions and the scores that we went over in CAMS today. You're not required to have anything approved or resolutions required as you would with an amendment. Good question. Brian said, excellent news. Yes, it is. What other questions do you have? Yes, Alicia.
Hi, this is the other Alicia in Lynchburg. I had a quick question on the designation versus expiration date. So I'm looking at the chart that we have, and it has our zone technically as expiring in 2028, but the renewal year is this year. So does that mean that renewal renews it through 2028, or it renews it from 2028 to 2033?
It renews it from 2024 to 2028.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Well, thank you for taking the time today to be with us for this training. It is a recording and we will be posting it on the website so that you all can have access to go back and look at it. We'll be sending out all of the information that we've talked about today by the end of this week. And please feel free to reach out to us for questions. We're happy to help in any way that we can to make this an efficient process and as painless as possible for you as the LZA. So thank you so much for your time and for all of your hard work at the local level at the Enterprise Zone. We appreciate it so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.